I'm really excited about sharing with you today why it is so important when you are hiring people to make sure that they're self-aware. In fact, if we could test for self-awareness, I would almost say it's the number one thing that we're looking for. In this episode, I want to talk about why self-awareness is such a valuable trait in interviews and how it can really fuel your passion and your performance and your purpose in terms of what they ask. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Passion Institute podcast. I'm really excited about sharing with you today why it is so important when you are hiring people to make sure that they're self-aware. In fact, if we could test for self-awareness, I would almost say it's the number one thing that we're looking for. See, as a leader, when you're hiring your key talent, we already know what their skills are. They've already put that into their CV, and all we're trying to do is make sure that those skills are translatable and we can actually get them into your business when they join you. What we don't know is their attitude. What we don't know is their awareness. And imagine if we could pick some of that up and save ourselves so much stress, time, and money, particularly if they are the wrong person. Now, the hiring game has changed, as you already know. The job market shifted. We are seeing people with an abundance of technical skills, but the self-awareness for me is a game changer. Harvard Business Review talks about the fact that 95% of people think that they are self-aware, but only 10 to 15% actually are. That's not great, is it? That is not a great statistic. And in this episode, I want to talk about why self-awareness is such a valuable trait in interviews and how it can really fuel your passion and your performance and your purpose in terms of what they are. So let's firstly define what self-awareness is. It's an ability for an individual to be able to recognize their emotions, their strengths, their weaknesses, and I guess the impact that they have on others. In the beautiful book, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, he talked about that self-awareness is a foundation of great leadership. And when we get people that are there, whatever level of business that they're coming in, they're going to be able to lead their role, maybe even lead other people if they've got a team. And when you look at companies, big companies like Google and Netflix, they're actually looking at self-awareness as a core competency when they're actually hiring as well. And you've heard me talk about it, passion a lot. This is called the Passion Institute podcast. And, the framework that I want to introduce here, that when we talk about passion at the Institute, we talk about P is for purpose, A is for adaptability, your strengths, your shortcomings, your influence, your ownership, and the way that you navigate conflict. So what we want to do is that we know that when we get people that are self-aware, we know that they learn faster because they've got a growth mindset, because they're self-aware of areas that they're not really great in. So we want to hire people that are going to be able to adapt, that are going to be able to change with what our business is going to go through as well. The other thing I wanted to share with you is some research from Tasha Urich, I believe that is how that name is pronounced. And they talk about the fact that the employees that are self-aware actually move through the organization faster because they're able to adapt much quicker. So being able to test that at the beginning and then being able to have people come into your business and then be able to get promoted and A, from a retention perspective, but B, from people that are natural leaders that are, self-aware will absolutely stay in your business and become future leaders in your business as well. And LinkedIn also found a study that employees who reflect on feedback improve performance by almost a quarter, 25% compared to those that don't. The other reason that we want to have people that are self-aware is we want to make sure that they make better decisions as a result of that. They are able to solve problems better. Korn Ferry talks about the fact that self-aware leaders perform their peers by 31%. That is huge. And Satya Nadella, who was the CEO at Microsoft, transformed that culture by having this notion about growth mindset and the fact that people that are self-aware usually have that growth mindset as well. So stronger leadership and emotional intelligence, when you look at the ex-CEO of LinkedIn, leaders like Jeff Weiner, they prioritize self-awareness in their hiring. Self-aware people don't just manage people, they inspire people to work for them because they're also able to talk about the things that they don't do well, their failures very well, which also, believe it or not, inspires the people in terms of who they work here. It's really also important that we get right people when we're hiring them that fit our culture. It is so important that we almost get a bit cult-like in our interviewing process because we want these people to be successful long term. And Gallup studies also talk about the fact that self-aware employees are 10 times more likely to align with your company values and culture. 10 times. Netflix also hires people that are self-aware in terms of the behavioral questions that they actually ask as well. The other thing we want when people come in is that they become great team players, and then their communication is really important. So how does self-awareness link into that? Well, people that are self-aware, according to the Journal of Organizational Behavior, have 40% fewer conflicts. Why do people leave? Because they have conflicts often with their manager. So if we can get some people that are self-aware, they will actually have less conflicts in the workplace as well. And how do we actually spot for that? So the big question is, how do we spot for self-awareness? Well, here are some questions, and here are some draft questions. Tell me about a time that you received some pretty feedback that was a bit critical of you. Tell me about what that feedback was, and tell me about how did you respond. So one of the things we're talking about is, how do they respond? How do they shift their behavior as a result of getting some of that? For us, one of the things we do is we have a passion model, and we introduce that in our interviews. And we say to people, take a moment. We're not expecting work out of the 7 areas to be your number one passion. But what we are asking is, how do you spend your time and energy now? Could you just take a moment to rate that and then talk us through what your top passions are? And again, no judgment. We want to get to know you rather than tell us about yourself. Tell us about your passions. Tell us about what you're obsessed about. Tell us about how you spend time. Another question could be, what's the professional weakness that you've already identified? And what are you actively working on? What are some of the steps that you're taking to actively work on that particular weakness? And the other question, which I love, is, how do you measure your success beyond your job performance? So you might be growing great in your job. As a leader, I'm giving you great feedback in that. But how do you measure your own success? What do you define as success? And seeing what people's notion of success is and what that means beyond the job, beyond what they're actually aware of. So I could keep going on about this particular topic for a day nonstop. I want you to consider a couple of these things as I come to a close of this particular podcast. In a world that is surrounded by AI and automation and everything being systemized, self-awareness is one of those human advantages that we can have as leaders by actually having businesses, because we want people that are more resilient, and we want high passion people, because we know that passionate people also create great high-performing teams. So I would encourage you, as you're listening to this podcast, to reflect on your self-awareness. Where would you rate yourself? How can you take some of the things I've shared and creating some of the questions in your interview process? And if you've got any ideas, or if you're an expert in some of this stuff, I would love to speak to you as an expert that we could interview on this particular podcast. Please take a moment to review and rate this podcast, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us on the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode sparked a new idea, or inspired you to maybe take some action, or helped you see a business in a new light, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us present a great show. Leave a review and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who also are ready to make an impact. Remember, passion is the fuel for greatness, and every step you take brings you closer to your vision. Keep dreaming big, leading with purpose, and making waves in the world. Until next time, stay passionate, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy. This is your host, Shivani, and signing on from the Passion Institute podcast. See you soon.